Picture this. You're standing in line at a coffee shop. Tuesday morning, 8:47 a.m. You tap your card for a $4.50 latte. The transaction goes through in under 2 seconds. What you don't see is the data trail you just created. Your bank knows where you are. The payment processor knows what you bought. Your government, through financial surveillance networks that have been quietly expanding since 2018, can access this information with a single warrant, sometimes without one. Now imagine that same transaction, but it's 2027. You're using the digital Canadian dollar the Bank of Canada has been developing. You tap your phone. Same coffee, same price. Except this time, the government doesn't need a warrant. They don't need to ask your bank. They don't need anything because they are the bank. Every transaction runs through their servers. Every purchase creates a permanent record in a database that never forgets. The Bank of Canada published a technical briefing in November 2023 that most people never read. It's dry, bureaucratic language, the kind designed to make your eyes glaze over. But buried in Section 4.2, there's a sentence that should make every person who values privacy sit up straight. The system architecture allows for selective transaction monitoring to ensure compliance with monetary policy objectives. Let me translate that for you. They're building a money system where they can see everything, and they're calling it a feature, not a bug. You might be thinking, so what? I've got nothing to hide. That's what most people say, until the rules change. Until someone decides that buying too much gold is hoarding. Until your perfectly legal purchase yesterday becomes a red flag today because new policies were enacted overnight. Here's what's happening right now while you're listening to this. Physical cash usage in Canada has dropped 64% since 2019. The Bank of Canada's own data shows this. They track it obsessively. They publish reports with charts showing cash declining year after year. And if you read between the lines, you can almost hear the satisfaction in the statistics. Because here's the thing about cash. It's the one form of money they can't monitor. A $20 bill doesn't report back to headquarters when it changes hands. It doesn't create a database entry. It doesn't leave a trail. And that drives central planners absolutely crazy. I've been following the CBDC development across multiple countries, and the pattern is always the same. First, they tell you it's about convenience. Then, it's about fighting crime. Then, once enough people are using it, the truth comes out. It's about control. Complete, granular, real-time control over how you spend, what you buy, and where your money goes. But there's something they can't control. Something that existed as money for 5,000 years before banks, before governments, before the word regulation was even invented. And it's sitting in vaults and drawers right now, waiting for people to remember what real money looks like. Let me take you inside a transaction that happened last week at a coin shop in Calgary. A guy walks in, mid-40s, wearing a company jacket from an oil services firm. He's carrying a backpack. He asks to see their silver Canadian maple leafs. The dealer shows him what they have. 2024s mostly, selling for $68 each, with silver at $63 spot. The customer nods, doesn't haggle, pulls out a roll of cash, actual bills, and buys 40 coins. That's $2,720 in silver, paid for with money that came from an ATM that morning. The dealer makes a note in his inventory system. 40 maples out. That's it. No name, no ID check required under Canadian law for cash transactions under $10,000, no financial institution intermediary, no government database entry linking that customer to that purchase. That silver is now off the grid completely. The customer puts the coins in his backpack and leaves. If he walks across the street and sells those same coins tomorrow for cash, there's still no record. If he holds them for 20 years and passes them to his daughter, the government never knows they existed. If he uses them to buy something from another private individual who accepts them, that transaction is invisible to every surveillance system ever built. This is what terrifies central banks. Not that you might own silver, but that silver transactions happen in a parallel economy they cannot monitor, cannot tax in real time, cannot freeze with a keystroke. The Bank of Canada's CBDC planning documents, the ones available through access to information requests, contain a fascinating section on alternative value systems. They don't say gold and silver directly, but they reference physical stores of value that operate outside the digital payment infrastructure as a challenge to monetary policy implementation. Translation: if people can transact in physical metal, we lose control. And they're right. Silver is the ultimate privacy tool precisely because it's not connected to anything. No Wi-Fi, no blockchain, no server farm in Ottawa tracking every gram. It's just metal, ancient, inert, and completely anonymous. The premium on silver rounds has compressed dramatically in recent months. We're seeing 1-ounce rounds at $65 when spot is $63. That's only 3% over. Compare that to 3 years ago when premiums were 30% over spot. You know what that tells me? Supply is catching up with demand, for now. But once people start realizing what's coming with CBDCs, that dynamic is going to reverse hard. I talked to a refiner in Ontario who processes silver for mints and dealers. He told me something interesting. They're seeing unusual buying patterns. Not the typical 1 ounce here, 5 ounces there retail stuff. They're seeing orders for monster boxes, 500 ounces at a time, from people who've never bought silver before. New accounts, first-time buyers, people Googling how to store silver at 2 a.m. These aren't preppers or conspiracy theorists. These are accountants, small business owners, regular people who read the Bank of Canada's CBDC consultation document and connected the dots. They're not trying to get rich, they're trying to preserve privacy. Because here's the reality. Once the digital dollar is fully implemented, every transaction you make will be a data point. Every purchase will be analyzed. Your spending patterns will be fed into algorithms that determine your financial behavior score. You're already seeing this in China with their CBDC pilot program. Citizens with low scores get restricted access to loans, travel, even certain purchases. Canada's system is being designed with the same technical architecture. They call it different things: compliance frameworks, anti-money laundering protocols, but the functionality is identical. Monitor everything, flag anomalies, restrict when necessary. Silver doesn't participate in that system. Silver is the exit door, the pressure valve, the thing you hold when you want to keep some of your wealth outside the panopticon. But the window for building that exit is closing faster than most people realize. There's a warehouse at the Royal Canadian Mint in Ottawa. I've never been inside, but I've talked to people who have. They describe rows of pallets stacked with boxes of freshly minted silver maple leafs, waiting to be shipped to dealers across the country. Here's what's interesting. That inventory level, the number of coins sitting ready to ship, has been dropping every quarter since 2022. The Mint publishes production numbers in their annual reports. In 2021, they produced 29.5 million silver maples. In 2023, that number dropped to 24.1 million. For 2024, early estimates suggest it'll be under 20 million. Why? Not because demand is falling. Demand is surging. It's because the Mint can't get enough silver blanks from refiners fast enough to keep up. The supply chain is tightening, not from shortage of silver in the ground, but from bottlenecks in processing capacity. Refineries that can turn raw silver into coins are running at capacity, and building new ones takes years. Meanwhile, the Bank of Canada is moving full speed ahead with CBDC implementation. They've committed $17.4 million to Phase 2 development. They've partnered with MIT's Digital Currency Initiative. They're running pilot programs with major banks. Deputy Governor Tony Gravel gave a speech in October 2024 where he said, and I'm quoting directly here, "The infrastructure for a digital Canadian dollar could be operational within 24 months if policy decisions are finalized." 24 months. That's April 2027. Now, look at the timeline from the other side. Silver production is constrained. CBDC infrastructure is accelerating. And there's roughly 1.9 million Canadians who own physical silver right now, according to Dealer Association estimates. That's about 5% of the population. What happens when that 5% becomes 10%? When privacy-conscious people start buying silver the way they bought Bitcoin in 2017? When the same fear that drives people to pull cash from ATMs before a banking crisis drives them to coin shops. You get 2011 all over again. Silver hit $49 that year, not because of industrial demand or economic collapse, but because regular people suddenly decided they wanted physical metal. Dealers ran out of inventory, premiums exploded. Wait times for delivery stretched to 8 weeks. And that was before CBDCs were even a concept people worried about. I'll tell you what keeps me up at night. The combination of expanding financial surveillance and contracting metal availability. It's a pincer movement. On one side, they're building a system where every digital dollar you spend is tracked. On the other side, the physical alternative, the thing you can hold that they can't monitor, is getting harder to acquire. Some people think the government will ban silver ownership if it becomes a threat to CBDC adoption. I don't think they'll need to. They'll just make it expensive through taxation and difficult through regulation. They'll require ID for purchases over $1,000. They'll mandate reporting to FinTrack for sales over $3,000. They'll slow-walk permits for refineries and mints. They won't ban it. They'll just make it inconvenient enough that most people stick with the digital system. But here's the paradox. The more inconvenient they make physical silver, the more valuable it becomes, because scarcity drives premium, and privacy has a price that goes up the rarer it gets. Right now, you can walk into a shop with cash and walk out with silver. No questions, no database entry, no permanent record. That freedom is worth something. The question is, how much is it worth to you? And more importantly, how long until that door closes entirely? Let me clear something up. Wanting financial privacy doesn't make you a criminal. It makes you sane. Privacy is buying coffee without your bank knowing you stopped at that cafe. Secrecy is hiding income from tax authorities. Privacy is protecting your spending patterns from corporate data mining. Secrecy is laundering money through shell companies. The Bank of Canada's CBDC plan conflates these two things deliberately. They'll tell you surveillance is necessary to stop criminals, but the surveillance infrastructure they're building doesn't distinguish between a money launderer and a citizen who just wants to buy groceries without generating a data profile. Here's what I've learned talking to people who've been stacking silver for years. They're not doing it because they think the dollar will collapse tomorrow. They're doing it because they understand that freedom requires options. And right now, silver is one of the last options for transacting without permission. When the digital dollar becomes mandatory, and make no mistake, that's the direction we're headed, your financial life will be an open book to anyone with access to the system. Government agencies, corporations buying data, hackers who breach the database, your ex-spouse's lawyer in a divorce proceeding. Every purchase, every pattern, every decision about how you spend your money, permanently recorded and analyzed. Silver opts you out of that system. Not completely, you still need Canadian dollars to buy it initially, but once you've converted some of your digital wealth into physical metal, that portion is yours in a way that numbers on a screen never will be. I'm not saying put your life savings into silver bars and bury them in the backyard. That's not practical for most people. But 5%? 10%? Enough that if the financial system locked you out tomorrow, for whatever reason, legitimate or otherwise, you'd have a backup option that doesn't require asking anyone's permission. That's not paranoia. That's basic risk management. The price of silver today is $63. That might sound high to people who remember $15 silver, but think about what you're really buying. Not just metal, not just a commodity. You're buying privacy, autonomy, the ability to transact with another human being without a computer in Ottawa recording the exchange. What's that worth? In a world where every keystroke is monitored, every click is tracked, every digital transaction is filed away forever, I think it's worth a lot more than $63 an ounce. The Bank of Canada is building a system where your money has an expiration date. Literally, CBDCs can be programmed to only work for certain purchases or to lose value if not spent quickly. They can implement negative interest rates by making your balance shrink automatically. They can freeze your account with no court order if your spending patterns trigger their algorithms. Silver can't be programmed. It can't expire. It can't be frozen. It doesn't care about your social credit score or your political affiliations or whether you donated to a trucker convoy. It just sits there, being silver. private, permanent, yours. The shop owners I've talked to are seeing something they've never seen before. First-time buyers coming in with cash, buying modest amounts, 10 ounces, 20 ounces, and coming back every month to buy more. Not to get rich, not to speculate on price movements, just to quietly build a reserve of money that exists outside the system. These are normal people making a rational choice. They see what's coming. They're reading the Bank of Canada's reports, they're watching the cash infrastructure being dismantled, they're watching China's CBDC experiment, and they're deciding that having some of their wealth in a form the government can't track or control is worth the premium. The question isn't whether CBDCs are coming. They're already here in pilot programs. The question is, what are you going to do about it? You can accept total financial surveillance as the price of convenience, or you can take some of your wealth, even a small portion, and convert it into something that's been money longer than Canada has been a country. Silver won't make you rich, but it might keep you free. And in the world the Bank of Canada is building, freedom might be the rarest commodity of all.